Welcome to the post-screening lecture of week 2. This week, the central movie, which was screened on Monday, is Dancing Arabs, directed by Ronit Nikolsky in 2014. The movie is also known by the name of A Borrowed Identity. The film is based on a book by Syed Kashua, a very famous Palestinian-Israeli author, born in 1970 in Tira, an Arab-Israeli city of around 25,000 inhabitants. As a teenager, Kashua was accepted to a very prestigious high school and boarding school in Jerusalem, Israel Arts and Science Academy. This is also recognized and mentioned in the movie. Yeah, we see it in the movie. He wrote a few novels of biographical nature, the first of which is called Dancing Arabs, from which the movie got its name. But as the movie is based on more than just this novel, the name Dancing Arabs could be misleading, and A Borrowed Identity is definitely appropriate for this film. I'm not even sure what is the official status of either of these names. Here are some novels of Kashua. He also wrote a sitcom, which is called Arab Labor, that was screened on Israeli television in 2007, with a second season in 2008, and a third season in 2012. As an alumni of the Israel Arts and Science Academy, Kashua was expected to take a leading role in Israeli society, which he did. His novels were all bestsellers, and having a sitcom on mainstream television is a serious matter. Further, being a columnist in Haaretz is certainly respected, as it is the most prominent newspaper in Israel. You might have heard about it, Haaretz. Here's a column of Kashua in Haaretz. However, identity issue bore heavily on Kashua, as we saw in the case of Mohammed Bakri, and he left Israel in 2014. This is how he's presenting himself now. Here I am, a Palestinian Arab who only knows how to write in Hebrew, stuck in central Illinois. Let us now think about the two creators we have already encountered in this course, Mohammed Bakri and Syed Kashua. And perhaps this is also true with regard to Juliano Merchamis to some extent. But these two, they were both very successful, the top of top Israeli society. But because of their Arab-Palestinian identity, they were not satisfied with their position as artists. They had the feeling that they cannot express what they want in their art, that they had to recite what the hegemonic culture demanded. This is a problem of identity, the identity and feeling of not belonging, of being a cultural minority, the problem of those whose culture is not the hegemonic one, those who have a different story. Identity is not the topic of this course. It is the topic of a course that will be given in the third year. So we will wait with it until then. So I would like to get back to the question of reliability of a documentary versus artistic films, and also to the issue of reciting what is expected. This is a short interview which Taufik Barhom, the actor playing the main character in Dancing Arabs, Iyad, gives in a film festival in Kerala, India in 2014. In the second part, Barhom talks about Indian movies, and it is not of interest for us. So I will let the clip run until this point.
Film, most of the times in Israel, we deal about our conflict and we do movies about the conflict that we have, but this is the first film showing us the conflict through children's eyes, which is they just don't have a conflict, and that they're trying to see how children react to politics, to everything. Because when you were a child, I'm sorry for my language, you don't give a fuck about politicians, about governments, about everything. And you just go instinctively. If you love somebody, you love him. If you hate somebody, you hate him. But there's no politics in this whatsoever. And in this film, you don't have it. You see the conflict through children's eyes and how they see it. And this is the first really opportunity to see it this way and really to understand why children, much wiser than we. Kayla is amazing. I arrived 3 a.m. in the morning.
Here is a transcript of some of what Barhom said. I'm reading the text which is marked on the slide. And in his film, you don't have it, that is politics. You see the conflict through children's eyes and how they see it. And this is the first opportunity to see it this way and really to understand why children are much wiser than we. Is Tawfiq Barhum right in what he says? Do you remember this scene from the film when the Iyad, the child, insists on saying that his father is a mahbel, a terrorist? One cannot claim that there is no politics involved in this. Do you remember the scene where Iyad was reading from the Bible in Hebrew and the other pupils laughed at a mistake that resulted from his Arabic accent? Do you remember how the children did not sit next to him in the dining hall? Tawfiq is a great actor, but apparently not such a great film critic. He doesn't seem to know what's happening in his own film. Or does he? Of course he knows what is happening in his own film. Politics is all over the place there. The children are behaving with all the political baggage which comes from their parents, their educators, and from the media. And Iyad's life in school is miserable. So why does Barhum say this to the Indian journalist who will then publish it in some journalistic media? Barhum presents the film as no politics in the eyes of children because the decision of the promotion team was to present the film in this way. It would sell better. Showing the difficult situation of a Palestinian in Israel is not what someone wants the world to see. So Kashua's criticism was softened out by presenting it in a framework of the presumed innocence of children. I'm not criticizing Barhum. Surely he does right to follow the instructions of the promotion team. The point I want to make is that we should be critical in assessing the circumstances in which a text was created, because this allows us to assess the text and the reliability of the story that it tells. And even further, what we witness here is that the artistic voice can be more authentic than the supposedly objective report of a documentary genre. We see here that there is more freedom in the artistic expression than could be in a documentary expression. Eran Riklis is the director of the movie. He has been making movies since the 80s, and many of them have to do with the Jewish-Palestinian relationship, both interpersonal or in the face of the state authorities. He's a sort of an expert in movies about Jews and Palestinians. So when it came time to make Dancing Arabs, he was a natural choice for directing it. We will hear about another film of his, The Syrian Bride, in the presentation of week 5. Nikolsky makes feature films, that is, fictional, not documentaries. This gives him the freedom to create whichever story he wants, and he does not have to follow historical events, as documentary films claim to do. As a teller of a fictional story, Nikolsky does not even have to comply with realistic accuracy. In Dancing Arabs, the hero takes on the identity of another person. This is not realistic. This cannot happen in the real world. One cannot simply take the ID card of another person and pretend to be that other person. But in a story, there's artistic freedom, and such a plot can be created. But as unrealistic as it is, this part of the plot expresses something very real. It expresses the feeling of Iyad, the protagonist, that if he only had a different identity, his life would be much easier. It expresses the impossibility of Iyad's existence in his original identity, and that the abyss between Iyad's past and his identity after living with the Jews for so long cannot be crossed. The subtleness of impossibility is in fact more easily expressed in fiction, because a story can present the absurdity of a situation in a way that makes an emotional impact on us, the viewers. This then is the power of fiction. The assignment this week is about assessing information from a documentary. You will do this in relation to the topic of the course, cultural hegemony. In the video you are asked to watch, an interviewer is asking some Arab residents and citizens of Israel whether they feel that they live under occupation. He receives a variety of answers. For your assignment, please answer the 2 questions. The first, what is the difference between being under occupation and being a minority? And the second question, study the answers of 3 people interviewed with regard to the question of cultural hegemony, and tell whether they talk about being a minority or about being under occupation, and can they themselves tell the difference. Submit your answers. Submit your answers in the assignment button found directly below the lecture. The deadline for submission is October 3rd, midnight.